Hi, thanks for joining me again. Today I want to talk a little bit more about the hi-hat. I already have a movie detailing how to set up your hi-hat pedal. If you haven't seen that, perhaps you should. But today's movie is a bit more about what to do next. Drummers globally underuse their hi-hats. They spend half the time playing with their foot firmly placed on the hi-hats, holding them in the closed position. And they go, yeah, sure, I use my hi-hats all the time. Yeah, no, I'm talking about using the hi-hat with your foot, not so much just playing on it with the sticks. So for us to do this lesson, you need something else to play time on other than the hi-hat itself. I'd put a ride cymbal up here. You could use your floor tom. You could play on the rim of the floor tom. If you had a few dollars to spare, you could get yourself a set of auxiliary hi-hats and set them up over the floor tom. That's what I do, because it's absolutely lovely to be able to play closed hi-hat on this side of the kit while still having the full functionality of the foot hi-hat on this side of the kit. Anyway, regardless, let's just use the ride cymbal for today, and let's break this down for a start into a challenge even a beginner student can take on. Okay? Now I'm sure most of you out there could play this beat at this tempo. Basic rock beat. We've all been there. We can all play it. Okay, cool. Now, let's play that over on the ride cymbal. As you can see now, I'm not using the hi-hat at all. Now that's, that's the problem right there. Drumming is about using all four limbs, and you need the hi-hat to be integrated into your playing. And I do that firstly by using it as a timekeeper. By that I mean, when you're playing in 4/4, dun dat, dun dun dat, you've got this underlying pulse of quarter notes that sits at the base of everything you do. So why not play those quarter notes on the hi-hat? Now everybody can hear them, yeah? And from there we can move back to that rock beat. And now you can see we're actually using all four limbs to play the instrument. And this added sound, this added dynamic, this added rhythmic statement in what we're doing definitely adds so much. You listen to the difference. Yeah? So just for a start, let's see if we can get quarter note hi-hats chicking away in time underneath anything else you might normally play in 4/4. So if you're a more advanced student, you might play a rock beat that's more syncopated, maybe slightly faster. For example. So again, we need to put that on the ride. And then we need to consider the quarter note in there. 1, 2, 3, 4. Doons, da, doons, doon, da, goon, goons, da, goon, goon, da, goon, goons, da, goon, goon, da, goon, goons, da, goon, goon, da, goon. Okay, so at any level, you can integrate this quarter note underpinning to your playing, and it's extremely useful to everybody on stage, as well as making what you're doing at the kit more complete and more secure, I believe, because if that is where your time is, then everyone can hear that. By that I mean, like, say I'm not using the hi-hat at all. All right, and say I just do a little improvisation between my kick and snare, something like this perhaps. Yeah? Relatively nonsensical, right? Relatively like, what the hell's all that about? Well, how would you know what I was thinking? I can tell you what I was thinking though. This is what I was thinking. You see, now that you can hear the downbeat, then all of these upbeats that I'm playing now have musical meaning. Without the downbeat being there to contrast them, it was kind of like, well, has this guy like lost the time or what? I don't understand what he's doing. It doesn't make any sense to me at all. Yeah, well, it doesn't without some sort of time reference. As soon as you put that hi-hat in there, everyone can hear what you're doing. So from a musical point of view, having the hi-hat as part of the way you play is really, really, really important, and most drummers don't. Most drummers really undersell the whole hi-hat thing. They don't use it anywhere near to their full potential. If you want to know, if you want to watch someone who does, go watch Vinnie Colaiuta play. He's one of my drumming heroes, and it wasn't until I saw him live in concert at close range on the hi-hat side of the kit that I sat there, you know, watching him play all night and going, I understand now. I understand now why Vinnie Colaiuta sounds like he has three hands, because he does. There's the third one. You would not comprehend the amount of foot hi-hat work Vinnie Colaiuta does unless you go look. And when you do go look, it is astounding. I used to think I use my left foot a lot when I play until I watched Vinnie play closely, and then I went, oh my God, I am so not developing this hi-hat technique to its fullest yet. So my point exactly, it goes all the way down the scale from Vinnie right down to the lowliest beginner. We all had to start somewhere, and where we all started with the hi-hat was we basically ignored it. Yeah. What might happen next with the hi-hat is we might discover the open hi-hat. I'm sure, you know, hands up everybody that's played this. There's our basic rock beat again, yeah. There it comes. Whoa! Whoa, look at that. That was pretty cool, wasn't it? Let's do it again. Okay. That's an open hi-hat, yeah, being played on the and of 4, an eighth note open hi-hat on the upbeat. And that's probably the first open hi-hat that any of us as drummers play. When we're beginners, that's the first one that comes. It comes fairly easily. It's on the end of the bar. It's marking the start of the cycle, back to the 1, all that sort of stuff. And yeah, you can play on any of the upbeats. You can play on the and of 4, the and of 3, the and of 2, the and of 1, or any combination of the above. But when you're practicing upbeat eighth note open hi-hats, that's what you're practicing. Right? There's 4 of them. They're all the ands, as I said. But there's also 4 downbeats in the bar, like the numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4. And even though it isn't as common, we do use the downbeats for open hi-hat positions as well. Here's the thing though. When you do an open hi-hat on an upbeat, it closes on a downbeat. So for example, if I'm using 4 to the bar kick, rather than the previous exercise, and I put in the open hi-hats on all the upbeats, all the ands. Now, I'm just going to stop playing with my right hand for a minute. Right, you see what's happening with my feet? My feet are actually playing quarter notes together. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Huh? So what's going on with the feet when you're doing that is they're doing this. Huh? Cool, cool. So you teach yourself how to do that. That's a beautiful thing. Then you go to do a hi-hat on the downbeat. That would be like, say, for example, doing it on the 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So you can see I'm doing the open hi-hat on the 4 now. And you say, so what? Try it. What you're going to realise is that when you do an open hi-hat on a downbeat, that means you're going to be opening the hi-hat, in other words, effectively coming up with your left limb. But at the same time, your bass drum is going to be going down because it's a downbeat. The bass drum has to play on the downbeat at the same time as the hi-hat has to open on the downbeat, right? And then the hi-hat has to close, and the hi-hat has to close on the upbeat, where there is no bass drum, or at least where there shouldn't be. You'll find when you do this, you won't get it right first time, because these are 4-way coordinations, and even the simplest ones, if you've never done them before, can be quite challenging. But like any physical exercise, the more you do it, the easier it gets. Once you can do it well, it's like, don't know why I ever had a problem with it. Okay, so with the downbeat open hi-hats, your feet are not doing that. They're actually doing that. Right? Like taking that to the fullest example, if I do 4 to the bar kick and I do open hi-hats on all the downbeats. And again. Go back to the open hi-hat on the upbeat. See the difference? So this difference between the downbeat and the upbeat is significant because that happens in all subdivisions. So you might as well get your head around it in 8th notes, and then later on if you move into 16th notes it won't be such a problem for you, because these open hi-hats happen at different subdivisions like every other part of the kit. Well, what's really interesting is that we actually measure those subdivisions out with the hi-hat. By that I mean we have controllable sustain. You think about this, as a drummer, if you see 4 quarter notes written on the snare drum and you play them at this tempo, then those 4 quarter notes sound like this. And if you play them on the hi-hat, they sound like that. And if you play them on the foot hi-hat, they sound like that. But as soon as you start bringing the open hi-hat into it, then you've got to sort of like, you've got to, okay, I'm opening it, where am I closing it? Well, in the 8th note fashion of 1 and, or 2 and, you're working in 8th note, so you're opening and closing on the 8th note. But you could have a quarter note open hi-hat. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. And you could allow that quarter note to ring, in its true value. Most musicians, when they see a quarter note, whether they're playing a piano or a guitar or a woodwind instrument, no matter what it is, if it says play 4 quarter notes, that means play 4 notes that sustain each for the length of the quarter note. But as drummers, we don't really have that sustain control, so we're just looking at the start of each note as a positional thing. Oh yes, we've got 4 beats that are a quarter note apart each, rather than 4 sounds that are a quarter note long each. Yeah? So bear this in mind, that the hi-hat is the one part of the drum kit where we do actually measure the control sustain of the note, or the open sound if you want to call it that. Yeah? How long are you going to let that ring for? Yeah? A quarter note, an 8th note, a 12th note, a 16th note, a 24th note, a 32nd note? Yes, all of the above are possible and in fact usual. So practice playing the hi-hat in different subdivisions. Like, don't just do your 8th note rock. Do some 12/8 stuff, do some shuffles, do some 16th stuff. Maybe, if you're interested, do some Latin stuff. There's some very interesting kick and hi-hat coordinations in some of the Latin rhythms. The bossa and the samba, for example, have this pattern here. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. So you can practice that up. That's a really good pattern. There's another one called songo. Has a quarter note here, which is cool because that's the only downbeat in the beat. The rest is like 1 and the 2 and 3 and the 4 and 1. Of course, there's more to the rhythm than that, but that's the relationship of the feet in it to the downbeat. So you're always learning new coordinations to play as you develop through drumming. Jazz players, for example, they're all over the hi-hat because the hi-hat is a major voice in jazz music, and whilst the jazz player will do many things with the hi-hat, one of the big defaults is to be able to play the hi-hat on the backbeats of 2 and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. So as the ride cymbal pattern is played over that, again we have this sense of time and rhythm. As the right cymbal becomes more syncopated, that becomes more challenging to keep that hi-hat steady. Add the snare voice, and now we've got 3 of our 4 limbs improvising while the hi-hat does its thing, holding it all together. Super glue, oh look out, the kick's in, alright? So now we have four-limb coordination happening, but again, the underpinning is the hi-hat. So whether I'm playing jazz, or I'm playing Latin, or whether I'm playing rock, or whether I'm playing funk, blues, even reggae, it doesn't matter. The hi-hat is such an important aspect of every rhythm that you should take some time to develop your left foot technique. Yep. So, I mean, if you're right-handed, of course, and if you're right-handed, you'll remember that, like, you know, your right hand was a lot smarter with the drumstick when you picked it up for the first time than your left hand was. Because you're right-handed, it took a little bit longer for you to train your weak hand. But of course, the harder you work on your weak hand, the closer your hands become. Being interchangeable. And the same thing happens with your feet. If you think your left hand was dumb, wait till you get to your left foot. Yeah, it's hard work. It's hard work to get it going, but like a snowball. Once you get it going, if you keep it moving, the momentum will start to drive itself and you'll get good results within reasonable time, you know, but it won't be overnight. It's a coordination thing. You have to develop it. But it's totally worth it, and that's what I'd like you to take away from this movie. I'm going to start practicing keeping time with my hi-hat whilst I play time on my ride or wherever else. I'm going to practice opening my hi-hat, making an open hi-hat sound, but I'm going to practice it on downbeats and upbeats and in all subdivisions. I'm going to look at the role of the hi-hat in different rhythms that I might play. I'm going to investigate some of the great players out there that use their hi-hats to the full extent. Yeah, and I'm going to keep working on it. I know that's what I'm going to do. I'm just hoping that I can convince you that that's a good idea too. Anyway, cheers.